everyone and welcome to another video where we help those of you who are not only too lazy to read stories, but also who are too lazy to look at pictures. Last time we had a look at the first issue of Zed. That comic was awesome because it revealed some cool mysteries. The main one being Zed's real name. Zed's name isn't technically Zed. His peasant name was Govos, but when he became a ninja of the Kinko Order, he was renamed to Yusen by Master Kusho himself. This time around, in the second issue of the Zed comic, we get even more mysteries revealed. But instead of Zed, these mysteries are surrounding Jhin. And because I know how much you all love the crazy murderer, let's get right into it. Just like it was with the previous issue, here we can also see the same map. All the places are the same as well. And even the description is still summarizing the Noxian invasion. So nothing new here. But then we get to the first page of the story, which begins right where the first issue ended. Zed and his team arrived in the Kotha village, which is the place where Zed witnessed what Jhin is capable of for the first time. That's where all those demonetizing images came from. And now, years later, they are visiting the same place again, to find the same person. From last time you may remember that the team found two bodies. One of which was the person Zed was trying to save when he was a child, and the other was the woman manipulated by Jhin to lure Zed into this village. And the cool mysteries get revealed straight off the bat. Of course, Zed is the only one who realizes that they are dealing with the Golden Demon, aka Kada Jhin. And he explains that Jhin is using daggers imbued with magic. That is why all of Jin's victims always look so beautiful. Last time, when the murders were shown in the comic, we thought that it was just an artistic take, so that Riot wouldn't have to show blood and guts all over the page. But instead, Riot has something way cooler up their sleeve. When Kane bends over these shiny corpses, he realizes that it is all just an illusion. The corpses look like they are made of porcelain, and their blood was golden. Until he touched it. The moment Kane touched the corpses, the illusion disappeared. So in the past, when we saw all those beautiful flowers in Jin's teasers, those weren't just an artistic take, those were Jin's illusions. He is enhancing his weapons with magic, and that magic can turn anything beautiful, until you can break through the illusion. What's more horrifying is that Kane explained that even though you can see flowers instead of the faces of the corpses, those flowers were not an illusion. The weapons still carved their faces into flowers. It's just that those flowers were sparkly and pretty under the illusion. But again, when you touch the body, the illusion breaks, and you can see a little bit more of a bloody flower instead. Right after we learn this, we got a sniper shot. And who else would die first than Jovan Tao himself, the most childish and aggressive of Zed's followers. And the next page reveals that yes, he's pretty much confirmed dead. We can see a beautiful display of colors with the illusion, but you need to remember, that is his ribcage open, and all of that are the insides of his body. So yes, Jovan Tao is pretty much confirmed dead. Which by the way means that someone else is able to pick up his weapons, and if that person is going to be Ren Shadowblade, I was right all along. But let's keep going. The comic reveals that of course it was Jhin who shot him, and you can even see how much power the sniper rifle has. But right after that, even more people bite the dust. We got a person that I can't actually recognize, but looking at the wrist guards, I think this was the person I thought would be Ren Shadowblade. So maybe that entire theory is out the window now. Anyway, after two members of the Shadow team died, little bit of panic erupted. But more importantly, as Zed said before, Jhin was using magical daggers to carve people into pretty flowers. But this is the first time Zed witnessed Jhin using a gun. That's why in this scene he's surprised that Jhin is able to use foreign weapons. Or rather that Jhin is able to enhance foreign weapons, so that even the gun can make everything pretty. A nice little detail, you can see that Jhin was able to set up the scene, because you can see his sign on the lanterns around. The third victim of the scene is the bolt person, which is the guy with the bow, whose name we have never learned. And behind him, Kane also got hit, but it doesn't seem to be a serious wound. This is interesting because after this scene, Zed straight up runs towards Jhin, because he still wants to take revenge on him. Which means that the comic never comes back to the rest of the team. All we know is that 4 members of the Shadow team died. It's Jovan Tao, the person I thought would be Ren Shadowblade, the bolt person, and the female person I thought looked like Vayne. Interestingly enough, remember how last time I said that Kane isn't as corrupted as he's supposed to be? Well, this is just a theory, but what if Kane gets corrupted by Rast because Rast is the one who saves him from death? Maybe in this shot Kane gets mortally wounded. On top of that, notice that his left shoulder got hit, which is the shoulder that is consumed by Rast later. So my theory right now is that after this scene, Kane has to make a deal with Rast, and he has to release his power a little bit to save himself. I'm talking about this now because, as I said, the comic will not come back to this, and there is not a single story that would explain how did Kane get corrupted. But with that said, let's keep going. After all of these takedowns, the entire place catches on fire, but it's a magical fire that burns even stone. In this shot you can see that Kane is still alive. He is wounded, but as I said, that might be the key to the rest of his story. Here Zed remembers a lesson from Master Kusho. Kusho told him that he always needs to stay calm. And if he can't do that, he needs to run towards his fear. And with that, Zed used his shadow to jump at Jhin. This is a nice symbology, because Jhin is what Zed fears the most. He knows what Jhin can do to other people, and he remembers the horrors that broke his mind. That's why the comic says that he's running towards his fear. Anyway, after that we get a chasing scene, where Zed is chasing Jhin through a forest until they arrive to a Blossom Festival. And here is where we get another flashback. 16 years ago, this is where Zed chased Jhin in order to finally capture him. Back in these days, Zed was still young and he was easily tricked. That's why instead of Zed capturing Jhin, Jhin was able to capture Zed. He didn't stab him with a dagger, but he just knocked him on the head. This allowed him to have some fun with Zed before he kills him. Here Jhin reveals that he knows about a secret love that Zed had always had. Her name was Yennevi. But things get even more interesting as Jhin explains who that Yennevi is. She is Zed's forbidden love. Master Kusho forbade Zed from chasing her, because she is the one Shen was supposed to marry. But to Zed that didn't matter and he still had feelings towards her. Of course Jhin knew that, and that's why he leaned closer to Zed to explain what's going to happen to her. He set up traps all over the Blossom Festival, and he was ready to trigger them during the main firework. Those traps would launch her towards the moon, and the red mist of her blood would turn the docks purple as her ribcage unfurled into a flower. That was Jin's artistic master plan. When Zed questioned why was he doing this to her, Jhin explained that her beauty was symmetrical. It was obvious and boring, but in that situation, it was glorious. She was the love promised to Zed's best friend, and that is what made it tragic. Jhin sent her a letter pretending that he was Zed, and he asked her to meet him during the Blossom Festival. That was the tragedy of that moment. Not only would Shen know that his love died while secretly meeting Zed, but that love would also die in front of the eyes of Zed. It was all according to Jin's plan. With this fact, Zed finally broke, and he said that he would tell him anything. So Jhin started asking questions. First he asked what was the amulet he was wearing about, and Zed answered that it was the amulet of the Kinko Order. It was the one Kusho gave him, and its purpose was that the Kinko Order would be able to find him. But Jhin didn't think anything of it, because his master wouldn't be able to find him in time anyway. But that's where Jhin was wrong. Sure, Master Kusho wouldn't be fast enough, but he wasn't the only person Zed could trust. And that's when Shen broke through the wall like the Incredible Hulk. It was a surprise Jhin didn't expect. And so, finally they were able to capture the Golden Demon. Right after that, when it was obvious that they won, as the heroes always do in these stories, Zed revealed their plan to the main villain. He told him that Zed was a bait all along, and all of this was according to their plan. But even though they were supposed to capture Jhin, Zed had enough and he was ready to kill him. But before he was able to do that, his knife was stopped by the Spirit Blade, which means that Master Kusho arrived. Zed insisted that Jhin had to die, but Kusho replied that this was not their job. Jhin would be sent to the Tula prison, because he was not a demon, he was just a man. With that, Kusho threw Zed against the wall. Zed still insisted that Jhin knew too much, and if he ever escaped, it would be impossible to capture him again. But again, Kusho explained that he was the Eye of Twilight, and they were the Kinko. Their job was to maintain balance between the worlds of spirits and men. Outside of their duty to the balance, it was not for them to judge or kill. They would not pollute that task, no matter the cost. Before we move forward, notice that Kusho actually has more hair. I mean, it's still not a massive mane, but I respect longer hair. Anyway, then the story cuts to the present day. 16 years later, Zed was at the Blossom Festival again, and he was chasing Jhin again. He didn't know where he was in the Blossom Festival, but he knew he was somewhere around. That's why Zed just started frantically looking around. He didn't have a better plan. By the way, I love this scene because not only does it show humans in the crowd, but it also shows a bunch of Astaya. And that thing. Whatever it is. Anyway, a few frantic moments later, Zed found Jhin on a boat floating away. But he didn't have enough energy to use another shadow dash. Jhin had everything perfectly timed. He was within viewing distance, so that he could still wave Zed goodbye, but he was still at a safe distance. Not only that, Jhin had everything so perfectly prepared that there was a circle of flowers where Zed stopped. This was a beautiful setup for the scene to follow, because as Zed reminded us, Jin's art is carnage. And 16 years later, in the same place, his vision of art was finalized. The story then cuts back to Shen, who, as you might remember, together with Akali were hunting down Zed. They were now in the tavern where Zed was with their team in the previous issue. Here they learned that Zed was traveling to the north, and that apparently he attacked a Blossom Festival, which of course we know wasn't the truth. But then again, all the people at the Blossom Festival didn't see Jhin. All they saw was Zed, so it is not a surprise that everyone would think that Zed was the villain. Now, even though Akali and Shen were working together, Akali was still on her own. She only invited Shen to join her to hunt down Zed because she thought he might be interested. Unfortunately, even though hunting down Zed would be nice, Shen learned that there were 6 demons who attacked a village in the south. And so, because he still had to fulfill the duties of the Eye of Twilight, he told Akali that he has to travel south. Of course, Akali would still go after Zed, and so she would go north. Then the story cuts to southern Quailin Highlands, which we can find on the map. There, Zed was visiting the Kenjo estate, which was the home of his old love. Now, if you are surprised as to why she is alive, remember that they captured Jhin before the explosions went off. So 16 years ago, during the Blossom Festival, they did stop the explosion from happening. That's why she survived, and that's why 16 years later, Jhin finally made it blow up. Anyway, after learning that Yusun approached her house, Lady Yevonai let Zed in. Of course, she still called him Yusun, because that was his ninja name. Here we learned that the last time these two met was the day before Zed left the Kinko Order. But what's more interesting is that before Zed did that, he kissed Yevonai, which again, remember, was a person promised to Shen. And the story suggests that that might have been one of the reasons why Zed was expelled. In fact, Yevonai points at that. She told Zed that if he kissed her before he was decided to leave, she might have even liked it. But she realized that to him, she was a reason to leave. So she felt like she was only a tool. By the way, this confirms that Yevonai was indeed cheating Shen with Zed. But in the end, Yevonai didn't appreciate it. So when Zed asked her for a favor, because Zed revealed to her that he needed to find Shen to capture Jhin again, Yevonai simply refused to help. No matter what Zed did, it was always something awful. She was supposed to marry Shen, but that marriage was called off when Zed killed his master. And instead, she married Kenjo, a kind and rich human. And with him, she had had a nice life. She also acknowledged that Shen was forced into becoming the Eye of Twilight, and he was given a duty and a title he never wanted. And then she questioned whether Zed has no shame. Shen was already in an awful spot. But on top of that, Zed killed his father, and now he seeks to destroy the Kinko. So of course, no, she was not about to help him. After which Zed threw a little bit of a tantrum, which didn't impress Yennebai either. She had unbreakable will, and Zed knew that Shen was powerless before her, just as he was. Yennebai just offered him one more cup of tea. Then he would get out of her house and never return. But that's when Zed noticed something peculiar. See, outside of her house there were 2 of Yennebai's sons. They were casting magic at each other. One was using Rain Strike and the other Ash Blast. But when Zed looked at them, he was able to distinguish what kind of magic it was. Both of them had Yennebai's gifts, because Yennebai herself was able to wield magic. But her younger son's magic was much stronger than his brother's. But the elements weren't pure. The younger son had traces of animal spirits in his magic. And so he asked Yennebai if her husband knows about it. Because at that point it was clear. That younger son wasn't of human relationship. Yennebai had a love affair with a Vastayan servant. The very servant that was about to kill Zed with a magic blade. But Zed simply told him, without looking back, that he had killed hundreds of Vastaya before. After which the Vastayan servant, which she secretly loved, simply backed away. And since Zed now knew something that nobody else should, Yennebai gave in, and she told Zed that Shen sometimes writes her letters. And in the last letter he mentioned a place he frequently visits. And with that knowledge, Zed ventured out again, to find Shen, so that together they could finally capture Kara Jhin. In their last moment together, Yennebai asked Zed what he was going to do, if he was going to kill his friend. Because surely enough, the moment he's going to see Shen, Shen will kill him in an instant. It was only natural after all the things Zed took from him. And Zed realized that. Unfortunately, he had no other choice. In the last page of the comic, there is a really creepy scene where Jhin is gathering kids around. He was about to tell them a story. The story of Zed and Shen. But what's awesome about this is that he's playing the story right in front of the palace where Zed just was. You can even see Zed leaving in the background. But as to how that story will unfurl, that we will learn in the next issue. See, just like the first issue, this one also had a lot of new information. To recap all the new mysteries. We learned that all the flowers aren't just an artistic take so that Riot doesn't have to show us gore and blood. All the flowers are actually an illusion, and the moment you touch it, the illusion breaks. And then you will see what actually happened to the victims. Then we learned that Kain got wounded by Jhin's weapons. We didn't learn what happened after he got wounded, but because Kain is yet to be corrupted, we can assume that the wound would fester, because it is on his left shoulder, and that entire arm is supposed to be corrupted by Rast later. So maybe Rast will be the one who will save Kain from the wound. And lastly we learned that Shen and Zed have even more reasons to hate each other. I mean, the dead father is still probably going to be the main reason, but Yennevi is the person who made things even more complicated. And the last detail I want to point out is that during this entire comic, you can see both of Jhin's eyes, which is unusual, because you need to remember, in Jhin's short story we learned that under his armor, he is wearing a latex suit that is covering one of his eyes. That's why you can only see his left eye. His right eye is supposed to be covered by the latex suit. You can even see that in-game when you laugh as Jhin. But now I wonder, why can we see both of his eyes here? There might be a special reason why he covers his eye later on. In fact, remember, these comics are happening right before that short story happens. On top of that, the short story I am talking about might be mentioned in the next issue. This might be confusing if you are not entirely sure what's happening in the story of Shen, Zed and Jhin. But I am just stressed out, why the hell does he have two eyes? He looks cool, but he has one eye too many. And no, people still keep spamming me that Jhin is supposed to have a robotic arm. He never had a robotic arm, it was just armor. I know it looks like a robotic joint in-game, but no, he has normal arms. As far as we know, he never lost an arm. I say this as Riot is definitely going to change this. Up until now, he was not a cyborg. So Riot, please don't change this. Hey, did you know that we have social media and Twitch where we talk about other League facts and stories? And did you know that we have neat mugs and shirts too? The links to all of that will be below. And as always, thank you, come again.